What is going on, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? My name is Vinny Vega, and today we're going to talk about The Division. Now, I do realize the gameplay in the background is the beta. I'm not ready to pick up the game yet. I'm going to go into that in this commentary. Now, I will say this, that graphically speaking, this game looks amazing, and this is on PS4 that I played it on. I wasn't able to play it on my PC because currently I do not have connectivity to the internet, as far as I need a Wi-Fi adapter, to be frank. The router is too far away for me to connect to it. Now that's neither here or there. I will say this, that I didn't know much about The Division before the beta even came out. Like, I didn't really do much research on it. I didn't know anything about, well, just about anything about the game besides little clips of gameplay I seen like a year ago. So to say the least, I went into this pretty blind. So in a way, my experience might be a little bit more insightful than someone who's really hyped about the game. So I think this would be a good commentary for you guys, for those of you that are thinking about picking up the game yourself. Now, something I do want to point out, I'm not typically a third-person shooter type of guy. I usually play first-person shooters like Battlefield and whatnot. But I do occasionally dive into some third-person shooters if it catches my interest. And this game in particular did, because I do like looter shooters like Borderlands 2, so I figured I'd check it out. And first off, the graphics look actually really amazing on this game. PC did get a bit of a downgrade, and we know about that debacle when they did the reveal a couple years ago, how they upscaled the graphics or whatever. Seems to always happen, especially with Ubisoft games. A growing trend, you know, it's always been a trend, I guess you can say. But either way, it still looks pretty good on PC from what gameplay I have seen on YouTube, but even though the YouTube compression system does dub it down a little bit. As far as the gameplay goes, it actually ran pretty smooth. I guess at this point you would expect that, considering how many times this game has been delayed. I think that would be really bad if it didn't run good after this long. And the transitions from cover to cover and everything else, it seemed to be running very smooth and seamless. As far as the story goes, it seems very interesting. There's a virus that breaks out in New York, and there's no word that if it spreads out farther past New York or if it's just a contained situation. I guess that would be the sequel, if there is a sequel to The Division. But basically, it's your job. You're basically an agent that comes in, and you're supposed to more or less clean house. Not only help out with the situation, but you also have to take care of some criminals that are around the city as well, that have plagued the city since the collapse of New York. The only thing we really seen in the beta was there was a mission where you basically turn on some power in a section of the city, and some rescue missions as well. Some side missions which usually involve rescuing hostages. It's kind of more or less the same. Go in there, kill a bunch of baddies, and then get out of there. Mission complete. Collect some gear from all the dead. You know how that goes with looter shooters. So in that sense, it is kind of atypical. As far as the special abilities go, that does interest me a little bit more. I wish they would have had a couple more extra abilities in there, because they had a whole list of them and they only let us use 3 of them. We can only use 2 at a time. You got the armored ability, and then you got the grenade launcher, and then you also have the healing ability, which is very useful. And the NPCs, they're actually very accurate. It's been a while since I've played a game where the NPCs actually give you some trouble. However, after you get in the swing of things and you kind of get used to what's going on and get your healing ability going, it kind of became a little bit more mundane when it came to fighting enemies, at least on the PvE side of things. Now in the Dark Zone, it's a little bit different. We'll get into that in a little bit. And just like Destiny or Borderlands, you have weapons and gear that go from common to very rare, and different color coding for that scheme. And one thing I really like about the customization, when it comes to attachments for your guns, you can take that attachment off and put it on a new weapon. It's not tied to that weapon. This is something that's a very welcome change in my opinion. More often than not, in most progression systems, it's just you have to level up that gun and then get attachments for it. And in some cases, not at all. Like in Borderlands, you don't necessarily get attachments for it. Everything's like what it is when you pick it up. But the difference is you get a bunch of different guns, and that's what made that game so great. It's like they advertise like they have a gazillion guns, and I pretty much believe it. There's never a time when I didn't run into a new set of weapons in that game. But anyways, this is The Division, and you know, it's kind of, how would you put it, like it's, all the guns kind of feel the same though. That's the only thing, you know, there's not really any deviation. There's barely any difference between assault rifles and submachine guns that I've seen. Like, there was slightly less kick with the submachine guns, but as far as like when you're running around and shooting people, it felt relatively the same. At the same time, we weren't really given a huge slice of the pie as far as the beta went. It was very, very limited. And for most betas that I've played in the past, usually you have a little bit more to deal with as far as the gameplay goes. It gives you a better idea of what you're dealing with as far as the whole game is concerned. And then that in turn will make it more incentive for somebody to buy the game. Like, for example, what I mentioned earlier about the abilities. Having a little bit more abilities to unlock during the beta would have made the game a little bit more interesting, to say the least. Typically for me, I'm not the one to just sit there and criticize a new game. I want to play it and I want to try it for myself and see what I think of it. So I always go into it with an open mind. And for this game in particular, I did have a lot of fun with it, despite the mundane moments as well. And one of the most interesting NPCs in the game were the cleaners. These guys had high-powered battle rifles, and they also had flamethrowers when they came up close to you. But the best part about fighting these enemies was you can just simply pop them in the tank with like a sniper rifle or something, and bam, they blow up. And just to see them swerve before they go is it's just awesome. Now moving on to the Dark Zone. This is the PvP/PvE area. In the game, it's considered the worst contaminated zone of the city, and there's also a stipulation when it comes to loot. You can't just bring it back and expect to use it. You have to first get it evac by helicopter. And of course, there's also another element you have to consider as well. Other players. Other players do have the option of killing you and taking your loot, if they so desire. However, if you do kill another player, you will go rogue. And this means basically anybody can have full reign that's not part of their squad to kill them. And if they kill more than 4 or 5 people, then they incur a bounty on their head, which means everybody has the mission to kill that player. Now, just like earlier when I said I didn't do much research, I kind of wish I would have discovered the Dark Zone a little sooner. I didn't actually play on the Dark Zone until about the last day of the beta, and if I would have played it sooner, I probably would have spent a significant amount more time in there. Of course, I had no idea about the whole rogue thing. I thought it was just all PvE with harder enemies, and I was completely wrong. Wrong. Especially when the shady swagger, whatever his name is, gunned me down in an alleyway. Apparently my swag wasn't up to his standards at the time. John C. To say the least, the Dark Zone is a high-risk, high-reward area. Better weapons, better gear, and not for the faint of heart. I noticed that a lot of people have mentioned that the whole rogue system is inherently broken, and I would have to agree with that. Because once somebody has a bounty on their head, you can see them through walls, so basically like wall hacks. And if that person, well, chances are that person is legit rogue if he's killed that many people, but maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was attacked by several people and had to defend himself. He was punished because he was just simply fighting somebody who was attacking him first. So they definitely have to do a little bit more tweaking with that, and it's definitely a cool system. I mean, it puts an element in the game where you don't know if you trust everybody in the area, and which will form alliances or partial alliances and stuff like that. Like, it's gonna be like kind of like a Walking Dead scenario where you don't know if these people are gonna be cool or not. You know what I mean? Every time you come across somebody new. I just picture this scenario, and I'm sure some of you guys have already lived it. You just got yourself some awesome loot in the Dark Zone. You're heading into the evac zone. Then all of a sudden 3 guys attack you, and then you're pinned down. You get 1 guy down, and then out of left field, 3 guys come along and gun down the other 2 guys that saved your life. They ask you if you want to tag along for an alliance. Sure, let's grab their loot, let's go to the evac zone. You get to the evac zone, you get your flare up, those guys come back, and then another firefight, and then you defeat them, and then you get your loot up to the chopper. So that element of the game is really cool for me, at least for someone who plays multiplayer. For someone who doesn't play multiplayer, who strictly plays PvE, this might be a turnoff for the game entirely, and that will detract from the game as a whole, meaning you won't be able to get that extra good gear in the game because you won't be going in the dark zone, simply because you don't want to be shot and killed by some random dude after you got some good loot. Because it takes like roughly a minute or so for that chopper to show up when you're getting the loot up, and in that amount of time you can easily get killed by someone who's rogue or someone who just happened to come along and wanted to take your loot. Even though I mainly play online as opposed to campaigns, I still think there should be an offline mode for this game, seeing how there is basically a story for the city for the PvE element. And I think Ubisoft should implement that in some way. I think that would restore faith in people that don't like multiplayer as much. And at the same token, make it so you can go in the dark zone offline, because there is NPC enemies that are actually pretty tough. Some at higher levels than you are. The fact that those enemies are still present in the dark zone would validate offline mode for the dark zone, at least in my opinion. Some people may think that's exploitable in a way, and I guess I could level with that. What if somebody picks up some awesome rare loot that happens to be pretty powerful, like a powerful gun or something like that, or good armor, just from playing on the offline mode and then go right into multiplayer and then kick ass, you know what I mean? So there's a fine line there. Chances are that's not going to happen anyway, so it's more or less wishful thinking. And I think every game should have an offline mode. Say for instance, in my case with my PC, most of my games in my Steam library are inaccessible because they're online only games. In conclusion, The Division is very well polished. However, there might not be enough content to validate paying $60 for this, especially for an online only game, despite the fact that it has a story in it. And what story is left in the game remains to be seen from what we played in the beta. Let me know your thoughts on what you think of The Division, and are you picking up the game? Are you not? Do you like it for whatever reason? Do you hate it for whatever reason? Go ahead and leave your thoughts down below. I'm putting together a build log video relatively soon. This is actually footage from last year when I built my PC, so if you guys are all interested in that, leave your thoughts on that as well. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Hope you guys have a badass day today, and I'll see you guys on the next one.